It has been a long time since there's been this much action. One sad note in all this, of course, is the absence of one name. Our job is to choose whom we think can be the most effective. It's an interesting and exciting race, and all we have to do is vote. So let's do it, and let's make it a big one. We pray that is so. This is Bob Harrington.
Washington moves fast, policies shift overnight, and yet, here in our corner of Vermont, the real impact often comes at the speed of town meetings and Main Street conversations. Politics aren't just about headlines and sound bites. It's about people, communities, and the choices that shape our lives. They say all politics is local, but in a nation this divided, what does that actually mean? We're not here for spin, we're here for clarity, for straight answers, for the kind of talk you'd expect over a cup of coffee at the local diner, not in the halls of Congress. This is Matt Harrington, and this is the Chamber Telecast. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed that intro there. A little callback to the days of Bob Harrington, my father, who reported for WBTN for over 40 years, and then integrated with some of my voice. We want to welcome you this morning. We're very excited to launch a new program in partnership with Catamount Access Television, something around a civic conversation we want to have, and we want to continue to have as the series goes on, something we're calling the Chamber Telecast. At a time of political transition, I think we're all experiencing this, and a growing uncertainty. We believe it's more important than ever to elevate voices of reason, engage in thoughtful dialogue, and provide Vermonters with trusted insights from our state and national leaders. The program is not only about understanding, it's not about sound bites, it's about clarity, and it's not about conflict. So we're not here to stir anything up. We want clarity around issues that we're hearing a lot from. Very much what we did during the pandemic and COVID, where we brought kind of big ideas and big thoughts down to a local level. That's exactly what we're trying to do here today. Each episode, we take a closer look at how the broader shifts in federal policy and national discourse affect us here in the Green Mountain State. From tariffs and trade to immigration, rural economies and workforce development. In short, we hope to bring Washington to Vermont's diner stool. We begin the day with a guest who knows those corridors very well. I'm pleased and excited to welcome Vermont Senator Peter Welch, has spent decades in public service, first elected to the Vermont Senate in the 1980s, where he became the Vermont state's first Democratic Senate president. He later represented Vermont in the U.S. House of Representatives for 16 years. In 2022, he was elected to the United States Senate, continuing the great legacy of Senator Patrick Leahy. Known for his bipartisanship, his pragmatism, usually a pretty good humor, and deep care for rural communities, Senator Welch brings both experience and empathy to the national stage, something we need today more than ever. Senator Welch, I want to welcome you to the telecast. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning. Thanks, Matt. And it's wonderful that you're starting this telecast, and really, really appreciate the opportunity to be on. And I remember your dad real well.
Yeah. So you have to let us know, where are you calling in from?
Well, I'm in White River Junction at Tip Top Tire. And if you want to get good car repair, or you want to get your winter tires off and your summer tires on, come down to Tip Top. It's a great place. I've been bringing my car here for years.
That's a great endorsement for them, and just again talk about how just a national presence, a national senator still has to get his tires changed from time to time. So let's start off with an easy question. I like to ask this question to most of our guests, and I just think it gives us a little bit of glimpse into who you are. It has nothing to do with politics, but what did you have for breakfast this morning, and what do you think it says about you?
No, well, I don't know what it says about me, but it was yummy. Our routine is Margaret mainly does cooking in the evening, and I do the breakfast. And it's today we had fruit, banana, and orange with a little yogurt and an egg, soft boiled egg, and a nice piece of toast with cream cheese. I shouldn't have done that, but it was delicious. And coffee.
Okay, and if you want
maple syrup, by the way, maple syrup on the fruit.
Yeah,
every day. I'm like Homer Simpson.
So what does that say about you, if anything?
Well, it says I love maple syrup.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, so let's get into some of the conversations and questions that I think we truly do have here today, and I think a lot of the community here in Bennington, Manchester, and beyond. have. Let's jump right into this. I think the topic of the week has absolutely been new tariffs in general, including rates of over 100% on Chinese electric vehicles and significant increases on other imports like steel, aluminum, and semiconductors. And we know a little thing about semiconductors right here in Vermont. What short and long-term impacts are you seeing or do you foresee for Vermont manufacturers, farmers, and consumers when we're talking about tariffs?
Well, these tariffs, in my view, they're a disaster. They are going to hurt us, and it's going to hurt Vermont very significantly. It's going to hurt the country. And I frankly think that when the history of this administration is written, this economic policy is going to be seen as the biggest blunder in a century. These tariffs just have no economic basis to them that makes any sense. Number one, we are now inflicting enormous tariffs on our best and closest trading partner, Canada. Vermont is one of 34 states where our biggest trading relationship is with Canada. We have very good relationships with them. We have the U.S. Mexico-Canada trade agreement, which has been working extremely well. And what I'm hearing from Vermonters, we've done roundtables in the northern part of the state, but hope to do one down south, is that if you're a farmer, you're going to be paying 25% more for grain and for fertilizer. If you're a craft beer manufacturer, you're going to be paying more for those aluminum cans, and in some cases, grain. If you're a manufacturer, like up in Morrisville, they make those Concept 2 rowing machines that are really popular. They're going to be paying significantly more for aluminum and steel that gets imported. Also, it's going to really hurt the already severe cost of housing, because we import our lumber, and in fact, we send logs up to Canada. They mill it and send it back here, soft lumber that goes into our housing. We could add $25,000 to the cost of already really expensive homes. So there's no upside. It makes no sense for these tariffs to be across the board. That's number one. So my hope is that the president's going to come to a senses and see that whatever his concept is of why these tariffs are, quote, so great, the reality that I'm seeing from just talking to everyday Vermonters, and by the way, this isn't a partisan deal. Some folks I talked to voted for Trump, some didn't, but they're all negatively impacted by these tariffs. So it's a very, very reckless, harmful policy to our country.
Do you get a sense, and I kind of think of even the Supreme Court this past couple of days saying, it's illegal to do a variety of things that he was doing. I think for us common people down on Main Street, what power does the Congress have? We kind of know constitutionally what power the Congress has, but what are you seeing, Senator Welch, in terms of your colleagues, and is there a stopgap measure, or are we just kind of waiting for the fumbling of the football, learning the lesson? As we saw, tariffs turn on, tariffs turn off, tariffs turn on again, and it looks like he's kind of learning his lesson in real time, which is very bad for a shaky economy. But do you get a sense of there's got to be a break the glass moment somewhere? There's got to be something where the Congress unites, because it was always set up as three different branches to check each other, and
That's right.
With the Supreme Court, even it's he doesn't care. So talk to us a little bit about that. Give us some assurance, I guess, that.
Well, yeah, thank you, Matt. Actually, you've gotten to the heart of what I think is an emerging constitutional crisis. Our whole country has been founded on the proposition that you can't concentrate power in any one person or even any one branch. And we have to have separate and equal independent branches of government. And that's to make certain that you don't have the concentration of power in the executive. And what's been happening, but this is really unprecedented with what President Trump is doing, is an enormous, in my view, overreach on the part of the executive. When Trump first came in, he ripped up the budget that the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, had passed. It's called impoundment. He wouldn't spend money on things money was directed to be spent. And when Nixon tried to do that, it was declared by the Supreme Court to be unconstitutional. uh, nevertheless, Trump is full speed ahead on this. Another thing he did was, as you know, unilaterally abolished agencies like USAID. Those were created by Congress. And the term that they're using or justification is waste, fraud, and abuse. All of us are against waste, fraud, and abuse, all of us. But that doesn't justify literally destroying USAID. And incidentally, there's a cruelty that has been associated with some of this because folks were fired who are foreigners working for us to deliver food that's in a warehouse to hungry kids who are outside, or medicine that is life-saving and that is spoiling. So literally people are dying. And then you saw the president unilaterally fire inspector generals. And the irony is, of course, inspector generals are there to be the monitor and to make certain there's accountability and that waste, fraud, and abuse is uncovered. So there's been this unprecedented, in my view, real overreach on the part of the executive. And it's very alarming to me that many of my Republican colleagues are deferring to the president. They have a lot of political jeopardy and worry if they get on the wrong side of President Trump. I understand that. But all of us who are in the Senate or in the House we have an constitutional responsibility to make certain we protect the rights of American citizens. And that's part of being a check and balance. And we're seeing this on the tariffs as well, because under the Constitution, Congress has the authority on tariffs, not the president. And decades ago, Congress delegated some limited authority in a national emergency, and that usually means military emergency, to give flexibility to the president. Trump is overreaching on this. We obviously don't have a military threat from Canada, just as an example. And it's really important for Republicans as well as Democrats to stand up to make certain that we maintain or actually recover our authority to protect the rights and interests of the American people.
Yeah. You said you're out, kind of, we've seen you traverse all around Vermont, and obviously, we want to be speaking to both sides of the conversation. You're running into red Republicans. I often think that Vermont Republicans are a little bit different than the rest of the world, but some of them did vote for Trump. What are you saying to them? I mean, how do we even neighbor to neighbor have a conversation? Because I think I'll take one example, on the premise, the idea that we need to clean up some of the bureaucracy and some of the red tape and some of the bloating that happens in the U.S. government. Okay, that's a fair argument. I think we all kind of feel that. But then there's this kind of extreme swing to that. Where are you finding in these conversations middle ground, Senator? Where are you seeing where maybe they can start to flex some of their thinking to go, well, this is a lot right now?
Well, I mean, the reality is that Trump did win, okay? And there are some things that he advocated for that clearly have a lot of popular support. People do want a secure border, and I would support that. People do want efficiency in government, and I support that. And looking at regulations that may be getting in the way of success, I want to look at that. But having an agenda and then the manner in which you implement it are two totally different things. So we're seeing, like with Doge, and again, I just want to reemphasize, we get waste, let's get rid of it. We can make something more efficient, let's do that. But when you're going to look at a department or even your own business and you're saying, hey, I got to cut costs, the first thing you do is you look at every single part of that business and you assess whether that part is essential in achieving the mission of a good product and good service. What Doge is doing is not looking at anything. They're coming in, getting a head count, and then sending emails to people who work there telling them they're fired. So what they're doing is firing first, trying to increase the body count, frankly, of people who are fired, and then calling that a savings. And the effect of that is to not make it more efficient. It's essentially to destroy it. So that's the approach that's being taken. Or, for instance, on the tariffs, there's a fair discussion about, is there an appropriate use of tariff as a tool? And I think when you're talking about China, and there's been significant unfair trade practices from China? I think the answer to that is yes. But what you saw in the implementation of the president's tariffs is that just on one day, where there was no forethought, they put together a chart. It had no coherent rationale to it. And some of the vivid examples we know about are that we have now tariffs on islands where there are animals, penguins, but no people, where we have tariffs on impoverished countries that do very little trade with the U.S. And there's no rationale for them. And it revealed that, yes, there's an aspiration Trump has when he says tariffs. He wants to, quote, make us rich. But on the other hand, there's no thought and implementation plan that allows for anybody to have any confidence that this is going to work. And what we're seeing on the ground with our businesses here in Vermont, from farmers to craft brewers to manufacturers, that they're getting hammered with both the cost of these tariffs and with the chaotic implementation and how much uncertainty it creates for businesses. You just can't run a business when you don't know day to day what the expenses are going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And kind of as we, I want to highlight two things, kind of I think a lot of the questions on Main Street is around civility. And then also, as you mentioned, kind of the entrepreneur heart of Vermont. And how do we survive that? So first, I'll go there, and I know our time is limited here, Senator. But recently, I was at a conference for the Vermont Chamber, and Congresswoman Becca Balint was sharing concerns about the tone of Capitol Hill. Really, just kind of a different world than it was 10 years ago, even 20 years ago. Really describing a volatile, hostile environment. And I think we're always praying for your safety, for Congresswoman Balint, and obviously Senator Sanders, making sure you're all safe out there. But are you noticing a change in that day-to-day atmosphere? I mean, it must be already changing because we see it all the time. But is there ever a swing back to normal, or is this?
Well, there has to be. Okay, we're a big country, and we've got people with lots of different views. And what the beauty and strength of our country is that you're safe. You should be to speak out. Your First Amendment rights are protected. And a democratic process has to involve trust and mutual respect. And that includes extending that trust and mutual respect to people you disagree with. And what we're having these days is my way or the highway approach to things. And of course, the president in his rhetoric is very incendiary and gets people angrier and angrier. And, that's just not the way we do things here in Vermont. And frankly, I think we need a lot more of the Vermont way of being in conflict, of disagreeing. We need a lot more of that in DC.
Yeah. Thank you. As we kind of close out, I do want to go back to that kind of business and Main Street landscape. And, as many of our chamber members are watching today, navigating workforce shortages, rising costs. We recently did a survey with them. That was the number one concern, was rising costs. That's flipped based on, I think in years past, it was workforce, right? So we often hear workforce shortages, but within the last couple of weeks, rising costs has shot up.
But by the way, I'm interrupting. I mean, that's a big consequence of the tariffs. The tariffs are going to make everything more expensive. The president likes to say the other countries will pay the tariffs. I think every practical Vermonter knows we'll pay the tariffs. So that inflation is a real threat. It's been brutal on folks, and it gets worse with the tariffs. By the way, once you get more inflation, people can't afford things. Manufacturers produce less. Unemployment goes up. Cost up, unemployment up. That's really, really bad, and it's a self-inflicted wound. But I'm sorry, I cut into the middle of your conversation.
That's we want that. We want that perspective and context, Senator. I guess I want to pivot right from there. As we kind of close out, I want to take a bigger theme. You talk about rhetoric. You talk about quite frankly, the misuse of it. And if you go all the way back to Socrates and Plato, there's good rhetoric and there's bad rhetoric. You can have good persuasive rhetoric. Is there ever a feeling like I'll take it in the context of the media. That there really has been the last 10, even 20 years, and there's articles about this and science about this, that really, if you look at Fox News, if you look at some of the more alt-right, way right, that really has driven a new conversation into the heart of America. And is there anything that the Congress can do? There used to be kind of in the early 90s, I think they repealed one of the acts that said now you can have kind of, more opinionated newscasting. Is there ever a thought that could we ever get back to a place where it's very much both sides have to be represented, or are those kind of the heydays? And I guess the question is, part of this is Trump, but part of this is just a general mood within the United States. And I think a lot of it comes from the rhetoric, not only from the administration, but also from Fox News or many, many, many other talking heads. Is there a sense that Congress has any power to kind of quell that, or do you even notice that that's part of the issue?
Yeah, well, they definitely do. And I think social media, which is totally new and has really eclipsed the mainstream and curated press that I grew up with, where you had the three networks and you had the big newspapers and you had strong local newspapers like the Bennington Banner. You had those throughout Vermont. You even had lots of small papers in towns like the Wethersfield Weekly, like the Black River Tribune. That's been supplanted in its dominance by social media, and it's very, very fragmented. And what we've seen is that the advertising model is that the more outrageous the comments, the more clicks you get, and that increases revenue. That's something that Facebook understands. So this is not something that Congress can pass a law and change. It has to be a collective effort on the part of all of us to restore some civility to our intense interactions. It's all great to be intense and fierce in your advocacy, but respectful. And the easier thing to do is just indict your opponent instead of make a compelling argument that's persuasive to the audience. So I think this is something that's going to be long-term. It's not just in the United States, it's throughout the world. But I think the effects of social media are something we're really contending with.
Great. As we wrap up with you, Senator, and I was kind of going with this question, with the workforce shortages and all the concerns that small businesses have on our main streets, what's a final message you might give to Vermont business owners, entrepreneurs, local leaders who are all working to build more resilient communities? But it's uncertain times. But I know the heart and the DNA of a lot of Vermonters is every single day putting one foot in front of the other.
Doing your best.
Our best. So what's a final message you might give to a lot of our business and community leaders?
Well, we all have to hang in. I mean, these are really extraordinarily difficult times. We haven't seen such a challenge to the rule of law. We haven't seen an economic policy that is promoted by a president that is doing so much significant damage. These tariffs are brutal for our businesses. So they're trying to navigate how to deal with that. My view is that the more we can speak out about the concrete impacts on jobs and on the well-being of our businesses and our farms, the sooner we may get to be able to push back and end these tariffs that I think just are going to do more and more damage. In the meantime, we've all got to hang in and speak out because we're just in extraordinary times when that rule of law and that bedrock principle of separation of powers and co-equal branches, that's something that is usually not on front of mind for people, but it actually is essential to the well-being of our democracy.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Welch. Thank you for your time, your candor, and your continued service to the people of Vermont.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. As we've heard today, the issues facing our state, whether workforce shortages, housing, energy, or economic resilience, are deeply interconnected with the national policy. And in these uncertain times, the need for steady leadership, civil discourse, and practical solutions has never been greater. That's the spirit of the Chamber Telecast right here today, broadcasting from CAT TV. to bridge the distance between the Capitol Hill and the hills of Vermont, and to create a space for real conversations and challenges and opportunities that shape our future. To our viewers and members, chamber members, thank you so much for joining us today, the first of hopefully many episodes we're going to have with many leaders. We invite you to stay engaged, stay informed, and keep asking questions. Thank you to our producers, the Cat TV, Catamount Access Television, and Mike Cutler. Thank you for being on the other line with us. And in closing, as we go out and continue to live our lives as Vermonters often do, let us not forget the words of hope from our very own President Calvin Coolidge, that if the spirit of liberty should vanish in other parts of the nation and the Union, and support of our institutions should languish, it could all be replenished from the generous store held by the people of this brave little state of Vermont. May we continue to live up to that legacy with courage, care, and conviction. Until next time, I'm Matt Harrington, and this is the Chamber Telecast.
Thank you.
It has been a long time since there's been this much action. One sad note in all this, of course, is the absence of one name. Our job is to choose whom we think can be the most effective. It's an interesting and exciting race, and all we have to do is vote. So let's do it, and let's make it a big one. We pray that is so. This is Bob Harrington.
Washington moves fast, policies shift overnight, and yet here in our corner of Vermont, the real impact often comes at the speed of town meetings and Main Street conversations. Politics aren't just about headlines and sound bites. It's about people, communities, and the choices that shape our lives. They say all politics is local, but in a nation this divided, what does that actually mean? We're not here for spin, we're here for clarity, for straight answers, for the kind of talk you'd expect over a cup of coffee at the local diner, not in the halls of Congress. This is Matt Harrington, and this is the Chamber Telecast.